Today's block, today's block is of Kuf Yud Aleph Amid Aleph, and we're up to Kuf Yud Amid Beis near the bottom. So the Mishnah said over here that if a person is married to two women that are both midrabanan, one is a katana, one is a minor, and one is a chareshes, one is definitely mute, they you cannot give, and then this person passes away childless, and now the brother-in-law has to marry. You cannot give one a chalitza in like every other case and say, okay, it releases both of them. Each one needs their own chalitza or yibum, and the way we learned it before was the reason is because one of them will be a primary wife, and one of them, excuse me, and one of them will be a secondary wife, and therefore each one needs their own. However, and we don't know which one is the one that's primary, which is secondary, therefore they both need their own. And then we had a discussion about what about if the husband himself was deaf and mute, maybe he had a certain affinity towards the woman that's similar to him in the same circumstance or not. Okay. However, we're going to learn that Chizda has a whole other explanation as to why each one needs their own thing. Says the Gemara, Kates Takanosan. So what do? You have two women now, and you have to set them both free. The person died, he had left behind a kana and left behind a chereshes. What do? This is what you do. Koines ha-chereshes, you marry, remember a chereshes you cannot give chalitza to because you cannot say the psukim. So by chereshes is koines. You marry her, but then umaytzia meget. You have to divorce her straight away, or divorce her before the ketana reaches the age of the chalitza, which is 12 years old. Or ketana, and when it comes to the ketana, is a tamtim, you wait until she matures, betachlitz, and you give chalitza. So each one you do something else with. So the chereshes you give, you marry and divorce, so now she's free, and the ketana you give chalitza. Now, what's going on here? That's what Rav said. So Chizah said, now that I'm understanding Rav, I understand what he's saying here. He holds, because he holds the relationships of these two women are different to the husband, even though they're both Rabban, they are very different. That's why you cannot release one and say automatically the other one's released as well. Each one needs their own release. What do you mean they're different? So he explains. So Rav holds that one of them is definitely married with the Rabbanon, but it's only a partial connection because it's not Mahatera. The other one is questionable whether it's completely married or not married at all. Is there a very strong connection or no connection at all? So because it has two different relationships with the husband, the brother-in-law who takes over has to give two different ways, has to release each one separately. Now, what Rav Chizah is going to do is going to try to prove which one is which is the one definitely connected, but tenuous connection, and which one is a suffix, whether totally connected or not connected at all. Says here, Rab holds, Chareshes Knuya Umashayeres. The Chareshes is definitely connected to her husband, but a big part of her is not connected. In other words, only a small connection. And a Ketana is a suffix whether Knuya completely belongs to her husband, or any Knuya, there's no attachment whatsoever to her husband. And I'll prove it to you, that's how it is. And because you have these two different relations, that's why you need two different ways of setting them free. Can't rely on one for the other one. And I'll prove to you that I know this is the way it goes. Based on what Rav just said. What did Rav just say? Rav said that you marry the chereshes, and then you set her free, and then you give chalitza to the ketana. So he's looking at because if I would hold that chereshes knuya, what do you call knuya? Knuya. If you can tell me the chereshes is questionable whether she's at all the wife, or she's completely the wife. And Ketana, so the Ketana is the one that's only partially connected. Then the Chareshes, Amai Koinus Umitzia Beget. Why in the world do we have to then marry her and divorce her? Why divorce her? Keep her. And say like this. And say Manashach. Teisig Abe Manashach. Why don't we leave the Chareshes with him and say the following? Manashach. Remember, if we follow that the Chareshes is either not married at all, if she's not connected to Shimon, she's not connected to Reuben, to her first husband, or she was totally the wife of the Reuben. Very simple. If you're going to tell me that the Chareshes is 100% connected to Reuben, so now Shimon married her, it says Yevamos. Perfect. And therefore, the Ketana afterwards, technically, doesn't need to be released anymore because from one household you can only have one Yevama. You already have Yevama. And if you hold that she's not married at all, never married to Reuben, then what's wrong if Shimon stays married to her? This doesn't affect at all the other wife, not having two women from one household because she was never connected to Reuben in the first place. And so then fine, so Shimon has her. And who cares? Yeah, so therefore must be the other way around. That the Tana is the one that is maybe totally married, maybe not married at all, and the Cheresh is the one who's partially married. So therefore, the Cheresh gets married first, and then we divorce her. The Cheresh gets married first, then we divorce her, and then we do Chalitza to the Tana. We cannot do what do you call it? Marriage to the Tana because you already married the Chereshes, and the Chereshes with Rabban at least is married to Reuben. You can't marry two Yevamos from one family. So therefore, you give Chalitza to the Tana. And why do we give Chalitza to the Tana? Because it could very well be that the Tana is one who's 100% married. And therefore, we have to do something with the Tana as well. Yeah. So now the Gemara explains. Because if you're going to say that Tana, why don't we say it the other way around? Why don't we first marry the Ketana and say that the Ketana, and do the same thing and say Manushach. And the Ketana, if let's say that you're going to say the Ketana was totally married, right now the way we're concluding is that the Ketana is either not married at all, never was married to Reuben, or totally married. So let Shimon marry the Ketana. And make it say Manushach. If she was married to Reuben, so she's my Yevama, and Elav can give us it's only an achris. Because in Cain, so we have a problem. What do you do with the chareshes? You can't marry the chareshes because you can't marry two women from one household. The only option is to give chalitza, but a chareshes you can't give chalitza to. So the chareshes will be stuck. In order to make sure that both of them are released, we have no choice. But first, we have to do the chareshes. Because if you first do the Tana, it could very well be the Tana was totally 100% Reuben's wife, and therefore became Shimon's wife. And you can't do anything else with a second wife. Can't marry a second wife, and you can't give police a second wife either because the chareshes. So therefore, we do the chareshes first, and we marry and we divorce her. And once you divorce her, because you can't do anything with the Ketana if she's still married to the Cheresh, because it's the sister of what do you call it? It's two wives from one place. So therefore, we give Chalitza to the Ketana. Amar Rav Sheshes says Rav Sheshes. Hachi nami mistaber. Rav Sheshes, a generation later, says what Rav Chiza says makes a lot of sense. The way Rav Chiza understood Rav that the Ketana, questionable whether married at all, whether not married at all, or completely married, and the Chereshes is definitely partially married. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, we learned there were two brothers. Two brothers married to two sisters. So Reuben and Shimon were married to Leah and Rachel. Ketana v'chareshes. And what happened? Let's say Reuben's wife was a Ketana, Leah was young, and Shimon's wife was a Chareshes. So let's say Reuben died, is Chareshes Yaitze beget. If Reuben died, then Reuben died, and now Shimon has to marry Reuben's wife. Right? Shimon's married Reuben's wife, but Shimon's already married to Reuben's wife's sister, to Rachel. He must divorce her. He cannot marry Reuben's wife. It's a sister of his wife. But on the other hand, could very well be that Reuben's wife is Mahatoida bound to Shimon, while Shimon's wife is only married to Shimon and Rabbanon because she's Chareshes. But Reuben's wife is a Ketana, and could be she's 100%. So what should Shimon do? So Shimon therefore divorces his own wife, Uktana, and regarding the Tana, Tamtin Achetagdol B'Tachlis. Waits till the Ketana becomes 12 and then he gives chalitza. Why doesn't he marry the Ketana? Because the Ketana now is the sister of the divorced wife of Shimon, and you cannot marry your ex-wife's sister. So therefore, he cannot marry Reuben's wife. But on the other hand, he cannot stay married to his own wife because he has now a bond mehatera with his wife's sister, and his wife is only with Rabban's wife. So he has to divorce his wife, and there's a possibility. So this proves that the Ketana, as we'll see, this proves that the Ketana could be not married at all, could be totally married, and therefore he has to divorce his own wife, but he cannot marry Reuben's wife either. So therefore he waits to get old enough to get a chalitza, because remember, Ketana cannot get chalitza. We compare Isha and Isha, and therefore, and then he gives her chalitza. Now, even if Shimon's wife eventually dies, he cannot marry Reuben's wife. because at the moment that Reuben died, he couldn't marry her because it was his wife's sister, therefore, or that his divorced wife's sister, therefore he can no longer marry her. Says the Gemara, because the mitzvah of Yibum is the moment that Reuben dies. What about if Shimon died? If Shimon died, then Reuben has to has to do some kind of a bond, has to do Yibum with Shimon. But Tana Yaitz, you cannot marry Shimon's wife as the sister of your wife. Reuben's wife is the Tana. So therefore, the Tana goes out with a get, and could be that Reuben's wife is not really his wife. Remember, Tana is something maybe not married at all. And if it's not his wife at all, then he should let her go so that he can marry Shimon's wife. So Yaitz give her a get, and now the Chareshes. What do you do with the Chareshes? The Charesh is the problem. You can't marry the Chareshes because it's the sister of your ex-wife. It could be it was 100% your wife. But you can't give a Chalitza either because the Chareshes can't receive Chalitza. She can't say the Psukim. So Asuru Loilam, she's stuck. But the Im Boal Chareshes, if let's say you shouldn't live with the Chareshes because it's the sister of his ex-wife. But if let's say he violated that rule and he did have relations with the Chareshes, so now he fulfilled the mitzvah of Yibum with her, a get, he gives her a get, and that's how she becomes permitted. That's how she becomes permitted. Now, we had a rule before, according to the Chachamim, that if you give a pasala, if there's a pasala bia, it doesn't in any way work for a yibum and doesn't in any way release her at all. So, what do you call it? So the logic, the last thing was if in sin they went and they lived together, he divorced his young wife and he did it and he gave her a get. She now is permitted. Why? If your original wife was totally your wife, then Bechlal, she has no mitzvah yibum because she is the sister of her sister is your wife, so then there's no mitzvah yibum. So she's totally free. And if Reuben's wife was not his wife, if Reuben's wife is not his wife at all, so there is a mitzvah yibum. No, so he was allowed to live with her. He was allowed to live with her because it's not his wife's sister. So therefore, even though you shouldn't have done it, but b'manushech, it's all right. No, l'poil, you really didn't do a sin here at all. Yeah. So the Gemara therefore says, now let's understand. We tell me the way we just learned right now, the Charesh is partially Shimon's wife. And Reuben is a question whether it's totally married to the Ktana, whether they're married at all. Therefore, the Chibola Chareshes, if Lepoili had relations with the Chareshes, didn't really do a sin there because it should, you're not allowed. He was not allowed. We didn't let him go ahead and have relations with the Charesh because it's the sister of your ex-wife. But if he did it, we say that what? Because of Manushach. The Amr, we say an Aveda really didn't happen, and the Manushach, she's now free. What's a Manushach? If the Tana was totally your wife, Reuben's wife, then Shimon's wife was a sister of Reuben, of her Yevam's wife. If there's no mitzvah Yibum, right? Because an erba. Then there's nothing at all. But Ilav Kunuya, if Reuben's wife is never really his wife at all, so there's a mitzvah Yibum. Well, he did it. Then Shabbat Miyam. Then he did the right thing. So there's no real Aveda that happened here. Therefore, she is set free. You tell me the other way around. Now, the Chareshes is the one that's questionable whether it's married or not married. But Tana definitely is partially married. So then you did a sin when living with the Chareshes. It's a bia psula because definitely she is the sister of your wife. She's definitely the sister of your wife because your wife is partially yours. If you're going to tell me that the Tana is definitely partially your wife, then the Chareshes is the sister of your wife. You definitely, or your ex-wife, you definitely living with the sister ex-wife, which is definitely usher. You're doing a bia psula. So how can it be? Well, bia psula patra. We know that bia psula doesn't patra, so that's a proof that you must say the way that Rav Chizda understood that the Chareshes is the one who's partially married, and the Tana is questionable whether married at all or totally married. Saying, well, that's no proof. If you remember, Rabbi Nechemia, we learned a long time ago, actually argues and he holds that even a bia psula does achieve what it has to achieve. The bia psula does exempt you from exonerate you from chalitza. So how can you tell me Rabbi Nechemia? Look later on in the Sefer. The next case, the first case was two brothers married to two people that are all midrabanan. What about one person married to two Yisaimis? One was a Katana, one was a Charesh. One person was married to both of these women, but Mason, he died. And Bo Yavam Alaktana, let's say the Yavam first had relations, to the Tana, to the younger one, and then the Chazor, the Bala Charesh, and afterwards he went on to the Chareshes. Remember, you can only do one, you can only have a relation with one wife in the family. And then he went on to the Chareshes, or his brother, make a difference. Nesru Shteyin, all of they're both now awesome. What do you call it? Why is the Ketana also L'chayda? Because they had Bia with the other wife, the Chareshes. So, but L'chayda, the Ketana is not a problem. If the Ketana was first, it's not an issue at all. Because if the Ketana is 100% married to Reuven, then now 100% you have mitzvah Yibum and you married her and she's your wife. And if let's say it turned out to be that was never married to Reuven, then it was never a problem of two wives of one family. So why, if you have Bia with the Chareshes, it become Asr? But it's because the Gemara will conclude it's exactly, you're right. If the Tana was, you had really Tana first, there's no problem. It's only because we're guys if you have relation with the Chareshes first. Since the Chareshes definitely with the Rabbanan, you had a mitzvah of Yibum, that's it. You already had the mitzvah Yibum with one woman. You can't have if you had relation with the Chareshes first, then you cannot have any relation with the Tana afterwards. Why? And if you did, it cancels the Chareshes, because it could be the Tana is Mahataida, the wife of Reuven, and therefore when you marry Ketana, even though it's second, Ma'atayda, she's now your wife, and the Torah does not recognize the Chareshes, which is only with the Rabbanah, therefore you have to divorce the Chareshes. So that's why if the Chareshes first time was second, you have to divorce the first wife. So we make the reverse as well. Even though the Ketana was first, is no problem. We decided to, because it's there to be both. Anyway, Kate's Takanasan, they both come awesome. So what do? It's Chareshes Yaitze beget. The Chareshes, you had to be with both of them. So the Chareshes go out of the get. If the Ketana was 100% the wife of Reuven, now is the wife of Shimon, so she doesn't even have the mitzvah Yibum. And if the Ketana is not the wife at all, well, fine. Then the mitzvah Yibum only is with the Chareshes, and you had your relations. So divorce her, because we don't know whether you can stay married with her or not. Maybe the Ketana is 100% married. So therefore, one way or another, you fixed her up. Uktana, if the Chareshes goes out with the get, and the Ketana, you wait at Shetagdul v'tachlit. You wait your Chalitza. So why is this not a Kodra Mechemya? Because if you learn the way we just said before, the Charesh is partially married, that's why we say, go ahead and wait till this girl becomes a bas mitzvah. And then Gechlitza. The Dilma Kodim, why? Because it makes sense. What are we worried about? Why can't you just live with the Ketana forevermore? Why can't you live with the Ketana? Either she is the 100% wife, so she's the rightful wife. If she's the wrong, and she's not the wife, and again, she's not part of the equation. So what's the problem? Because the Dilma, we're worried, Kodim Charesh. But you might go ahead and do the wrong thing and boil the Chareshes first, and then because the Ketana might be the one Mahatoida, and that's only the Rabbanon, she's going to force you to divorce the Chareshes. Have the Bia the Ketana be Psula. And then the Bia of the Ketana comes out, might be a Bia Psula, because since you're already married to the Chareshes, and you're definitely married to the Chareshes, and you had no right to live with the Ketana, because with Rabbanon at least is Jiv Yibum. So you did a disqualified Bia, and therefore we have a problem. Makes sense. If you say something, I'm a Bia Psula, Rabbanon good proof. Omar Rabash goes along and says, from the Reisha also, I don't have to go through this whole elaborate Mishnah here. I can even prove you from earlier on. The Tani says, Im bo ala Chareshes, it says in the first part of the Mishnah, that if the Yavam had relations with the Chareshes, Noisin Laget, you have to give her a get, Vahuta, now she's permitted. Like Tani, and it doesn't say Im bo ala Ktana. If he had relations with the Ktana, Noisin Laget, you give her a get, Vahuta, she's permitted. It doesn't say that at all. Because so the must be the Rabbanon. So the Gemara, that's no proof. You know why it doesn't say that? Charesh is the less like takanta the hetei ktani. By the Chareshes, the reason why we mentioned it by the Chareshes is because the Chareshes, there is no way that you can have relation with her in a permitted way, because the Ketana might be 100% the wife. So therefore, we mentioned that if you did it, it's permitted. The Yisur, we have no choice. It's the only way to release it. So we mentioned, even though you shouldn't do it. Oh, but Ketana, these are Kanta Teda. But Ketana, you have an option. Go ahead and give Chalitza. By a Charesh, there's no option of Chalitza. So therefore, we tell her to say that even though you shouldn't have had Bia, but if you did, she now can be give her a get and she's free. But by a Ketana, because you have an alternative, I don't know which one. I don't care which one you did first. Because you have always an alternative Ketana, wait till she becomes Bas Mitzvah, and then you give her a Chalitza. So therefore, we're never going to say. And if you violated our rule and you had Bia with the Ketana after you had with the Chareshes. We never said that. But Tana, these at the counter the table, the counter, so we don't mention it. So it doesn't prove that because we're against Easter or not against, it doesn't prove that we're not agreeing with Chemia or we are agreeing with Chemia. It doesn't matter. The reason why we don't mention this is because we have a legal option. Why in the world should even allow for or even mention the illegal option? Okay, Mishnah. Now we in the next few pages we go through a number of cases. We're going to exhaust every possible case of two brothers with these two different women, or one brother and yes sisters, not sisters, and so on. So as they say, Yiddish halkop. Misha Hayanasa the shtei same is Ktanis. Reuben was married to two women. They were both minors, only married midrabanan. Calling them Yisaimis is telling us that they're only married midrabanan because the father's no longer around, married by the mother or by the siblings. And then Reuben died. So first, they're both Tanas, they're both exactly the same. First, the Yavam had relations with the first one, and then the Chazar Baal Hashni, and then he had relations with the second Tana. Brother did. It makes no difference. Is like Pasal. Even the first one is your wife, because they're both at the same level, right? They're both the same level midrabanan, or whatever you want to call it. Questionable if they're married or not married at all. It makes no difference. They're both exactly the same. So if the first one is your wife, the second one you shouldn't have done it. It was nus, but that's all it is. It doesn't in any way impact on the first one because it's no stronger, no different than the first one. And if the first one wasn't your wife, well, then neither was if there's no at all marriage between a minor and an adult, then the second one also. There's no marriage between a minor and an adult. So this makes no impact whatsoever. So therefore you keep the first one and the second one is set free. The same thing. You have two women identical. They're both Rabbanan, but they're both Cheresh. Tana, the Chereshes. Sorry, the Beit Chereshes. Come. What about a Ktana and a Chereshes? You have one is a Ktana, one is a Chereshes. We had this before. Yavam ala Ktana. If the Yavam had relations with the Ktana, the Chazar Baal Chereshes. Afterwards, he had relations with the Chereshes. Oy sheba ochra Chereshes. Pasal the Ktana, having relation with the Cheresha second ruins the Ktana. Why? Why is it ruining the Ktana? Because we are worried. We said before, it doesn't make sense. The Ktana is a manushach. If it's 100% your wife, 100% your wife. What you do afterwards doesn't matter. It has no impact. And if it's not your wife at all, then who cares what you do afterwards? It doesn't impact either. So we said before already, it's a gzeda. If what happens if you first had relation with the Chereshes, which is only midrabanan, and then with the Ktana, which could possibly be mahatayra, is yibum, which therefore cancels the Chereshes. Because the Ktana second cancels first the Chereshes. So if the Ktana was first, Chereshes second, it also cancels the Ktana which is first because of that gzeda. So apostles like Ktana because of this gzeda. What about the other way around? First, the Yavam has a relation with the Chereshes, and then the Chazar, either he who bought Tana or Shabbat Ochel Tana, and then the Tana afterwards. Here, everyone understands it cancels the Chereshes. Passes the Chereshes, it passes the Chereshes. Why? Because could very well be that the Tana is the one that Mahatoida is fully married to, was fully married to the first husband, therefore the Yibum is Mehatoida, and therefore the Torah doesn't recognize your marriage to Chereshes, and therefore you have to let go of the Chereshes, because you can only have one person from a house, not two. What about a pitachas v'chareshes? So Reuben was married to two women. One was an adult and one was a chareshes. Bo yavam ala pikachas. So the pikachas is mahatoida. There's a mitzvah yibum. So let's say the yavam had relations with pikachas first, and then chazar chareshes, or he or his brother chareshes. Let pass the pikachas. It has no impact at all on pikachas. Pikachas mahatoida. The chareshes is rabbanon. No impact at all. What about bo yavam chareshes? What happened first? You had relations with the chareshes, then chazar pikachas. Either you or your brother later had relations with adult. Adult cancel the chareshes. Pass the chareshes. Very obvious. Chareshes is only with the rabbanon. The adult is mahatoida, and therefore you can't live with both because you can only have one woman from a household, so therefore you have to divorce the Chereshes. What about G'dayla v'Ktana? So you had a G'dayla and a Ktana. So before they were both G'dayla, but one was a Chereshes, one was the. You had an adult and you had a Ktana. Same idea. If you first had a relation with G'dayla after Reuben died, and then the Chazar Balak-Tana, Oshabach, you or your brother went like Tana again, it has no bearing. Like possible G'dayla, because that's Ma'atayda, and then whatever you do afterwards doesn't matter. It's just nus. What happens first? You have relation with Tana, then the Chazar Baal Hashni, then after when the G'dayla, who passes the Tana, that passes the Tana, like we said before, because the Tana could be totally married, could be not married at all, and the G'dayla is 100%. So it passes the Tana. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabban. In this case over here, let the Ktana go out of the marriage and just keep, instead of passing the Ktana, let the Ktana be Memayin. So therefore, she was never married. She was never married in the first place to Reuven. So and then Shimon just stays married with the Gdela, and she's out of the picture through a mean, as if she was never married. And therefore she has no issue of living with what do you call Shimon or Reuben's relatives and all that. Says the Gemara, like Rabbi Loza. That one that we the Rabbi Loza. This is Rabbi Loza Mishmoya, who was one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Kim. And Rabbi Loza, halachic Rabbi Loza. So Rabbi Loza was the Amaida who was a student of Rabbi Yechanan. We also have him a few times with Rav, but mainly Rabbi Yechanan. And we heard before Rabbi Loza was devoted, totally devoted to Rabbi Yechanan. That's why he didn't even have to bother saying things in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, because we knew exactly who he meant. And when he's saying here that the halach is like Rabbi Loza the Tana. What the niyun is all right. Says the Gemara. We need Shmuel and Rabbi Loza Mevadas and Rabbi Loza the Amoida to say that the halach is like Rabbi Loza, and here the halach is like Rabbi Loza. This case here we mind, and we also had the case before where one of the Shimon was married to an adult, and Reuben was married to a minor, and then what do you call it? The other way around. Shimon was married to a minor, Reuben was married to an adult, Reuben passed away. So we according to Rabbi Lezer, we tell Shimon, tell yours, and there were sisters, tell your wife Memayin, and we encourage her to be Memayin and for the mitzvah, and then you can marry Reuben's wife totally. So as you want to see, we need both cases. Because in the first case, we want to be able to fulfill the mitzvah of Yibum, because Reuben died and he has an adult wife. Therefore, the only way to become mitzvah Yibum is if Shimon asks his wife to go ahead and do Mian. The kind mitzvah Yibum over here, you become mitzvah with both of them. You Mekayim, because you married both of them. You live with both of them. Then Eima Tavayu live could beget. Then maybe once you discharge your mitzvah of Yibum, that's the first time you have Bia, you did the mitzvah of Yibum. Afterwards, she's a wife. So then maybe you just don't need to go ahead and to encourage her to mean. And just give it a get, because we learned before we don't like Bia. We don't want people to do mean. The Yashmin and Baha, if we do over here, Bakapar said that we want to distance ourselves from mean. The Yashmin and Baha, and if we say over here, you have a full adult in front of you, in the Aval and therefore we encourage the Tanakh over there. We have a full adult who wants to get married. Aval Idach, but in another case, over here they're both before you. Both of them are standing here before you. So therefore, we want, you have two women here. Reuben died. One of them is a Tana. They're both not yet your wife. One of them has to be your wife. One of them isn't. So we encourage that the Tana to go ahead and be married on the first husband. Therefore, you only have one wife left. Easy. But in the other case, you're already married to a woman, but she's a Tana. Your brother passed away, and he left behind a Gedolah. Maybe in that case, we don't tell you to leave your wife in order to help the other person. So therefore, we need that as well. Next case. Yavam Cotton, Yavam, who was a minor, Shabbat Yavam Aktana, a minor Yavam who had relations with Yavam Aktana. It's not good enough yet. So they both have to grow up. If he wants to divorce her, he cannot divorce her until he becomes bar mitzvah. Boa Yavam Agdayla. And what happens if he had relations with Yevamos Daf from 9 years old already onwards? He's He had relations with Yevamos Daf, Tigadlenu. We tell him, grow up. If you want a divorce, you have to grow up and become bar mitzvah. The Yevamos says within 30 days, the woman says, the woman says that, we're supposed to be getting married, he's supposed to set me free, whatever it is, it hasn't happened. We then turn around and say, oh, you're playing around? You force him to give chalitza. What happens after 30 days? She comes forward and says nothing happened. We don't believe her, because we don't believe that a man can have a woman in his bedroom for 30 days and not have any relations. She should have said something before. So therefore, okay, at least according to her, there's no yibum here. So that means according to her, she cannot live with him. So we ask him, because we don't really believe her, but we ask him a favor. Look, she can't live with you anyway. Do her a favor and give her chalitza. And we'll see more later explain what's going on here. But if he admits That what? That Itaka didn't have any relation with her after 12 months. Then we force him. You have to set her free. You had an option to do Yibum, you didn't do it, you have to set her free. If she, let's say, didn't like her brother-in-law when she was married to her husband, she had no idea. She didn't anticipate her husband was going to die. And she made a vow. I don't want to live with Shimon ever. I don't have anything to do with Shimon. So it's a genuine vow. It's not just to avoid having to marry, because at that time it didn't even enter her mind. She just didn't, there was a strong dislike for Shimon, and she made a vow I don't have anything to do with him. Then Reuben passed away. We forced him to give her chalitza because they can never live together. But after her husband died, she makes this vow. In other words, she's trying to get out of Yibum. Then we cannot force him what to do. Say, look, it's not really going to be a healthy relationship. Maybe you should give her a chalitza. But if she and her husband, let's say, was sick and she had an idea that maybe her husband will die, and therefore when she made a neder, even in the lifetime of her husband, that was her intention. I don't want to ever be caught up and stuck with my brother-in-law. I feel even b'chaya baila is mevakshin heimenu. So the purpose of the neder is to get out of Yibum. Then we ask him a favor. She yachla give her chalitza. Says the Gemara, let us say that Masnis in our Mishnah does not follow Rameir. The Tanya, if you remember, Rameir says that a cotton and a Tana cannot do Yibum, because how do you know that this cotton and the Tana won't turn out to be a Saris, or she won't turn out to be an islandess, which means that you cannot have bearing the children, therefore there's no mitzvah of Yibum. So because there's a possibility, as unlikely as it is, that should happen, we don't allow a cotton or a Tana to have Yibum. They don't do chalitza because we're worried that maybe he'll turn out to be sterile or she'll be an islandess. So therefore, they're actually living with a brother's wife in sin. And here the Mishnah says that a Yavam cotton, can marry a Ketana. Says the Gemara, I feel Rameh. Ki Amar Rameh. When does Rameh say that it's forbidden a Gedola le cotton? If she's a Gedola, she has a mitzvah yibum, and she goes ahead and marries her brother-in-law who's under bar mitzvah, it's a problem. Because maybe there won't be any mitzvah with him at all because he's sterile, plus he'll be doing an Aveda. Uktana le Godel, same to her. If she's a Ketana to a Godel, the Chad Menah, you be disuru. One of them is doing an Aveda here, because could be turn out to be sterile and Aveda. Avo Kotna Balaktana. But in the Mishnah's case, it's talking about they're both minors. Mahatayda, they have no mitzvahs. The Tavayu Ka'adodin, they're both in the same level of mitzvahs and par. Loy Amar, may have never banned that. He wasn't worried about that. So the Gemara B'Havtani, it says in the next case in the Mishnah, it says Bo Ayevam G'doila, says even a cotton with an adult. You're telling me that the Mishnah can't be Rameh. We're talking about both minors, and therefore they both don't really have a sin. But there is a case in the Mishnah, 3 lines in the Mishnah, where it says that this 9-year-old kid had relations with Yevamos Daf, Tigat Lenu. They should wait till they become, bar mitzvah to divorce and so on and so forth. So we see that you could, even a 9-year-old with an adult, and according to Rameh, that's definitely forbidden because maybe he'll turn out to be sterile. The Mishnah doesn't say this is what you should do. The Mishnah says this is what happened. But it happened. It happened. So the Gemara is right. Yeah. But if they're both under bar mitzvah, we have a rule. We'll learn later on. Actually, we'll have a rule that cotton oichel nevelas ain't bezna mitzvah lahafrisha. If a child doesn't aveda, bezna doesn't have to intervene. So the same thing over here. If they're both under bar mitzvah and bas mitzvah, and they live together, even though the Rameh says there's a possibility it'll turn out to be sterile or an islandess, doesn't matter because we don't have to stop them. But the problem is the case with a gdoila and a cotton, we should stop them. So we answer talking about they already did it. Says it says in the Mishnah they can continue living together. It says clearly they continue living together, and they should just grow up before if he wants to separate, so on and so forth. And the chobiyah be disuru every time they do a new issur. Why aren't we stopping them? You are right. Let's go back to the clarity would be if we go back maslisin to like Rameh. Our Mishnah definitely does not conform with Rameh, and Rameh would not allow this. Says the Gemara Krikan, what can't be called over here? It says a pasuk hakim. The whole purpose is lahakim shem be Yisrael, or to give his brother a name. To lahakim laachim shem be Yisrael, to give it to establish a name to his brother by Yidden. V'hai labar hachihu. If he's a cotton, according to Rabbanan, we're not worried about a saris. But l'chayda, he can't procreate. So how can we allow Yidden then? Any male, doesn't matter how old he is, he can. Even without How can it be? You're going to tell me that today they're us and tomorrow the mutter becomes a bit older. Since tomorrow, when it becomes older mutter, you can already now start having relations, and eventually they'll, they have to make it happen. It's not us today because it's a matter of time. There's nothing to be done. It's only a matter of time. Otherwise, doesn't make sense. Why not? Why does it make sense? Maybe today it's forbidden, tomorrow it's permitted, because there's a rule. If the day that Reuven passed away, the day that the child has passed away, she couldn't marry the brother, then she can never marry the brother. So if you tell me that now he's 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10, or whatever it is, cannot marry her, then how can he marry her because of mitzvah? It all matters on that day. It all pivots around that day that the Yavam died. So therefore it says here, since if you just name it up, the day that Reuben died, if for whatever reason it was an Issa for her to marry Shimon. For example, her sister was married to Shimon, and a week later her sister dies. She cannot marry Shimon anymore because the day that Reuben died, it was forbidden. She was forbidden to Shimon. Otherwise, we treat as if they were children, and that's it. So how come it must be? Now, that the child was under bar mitzvah at the time Reuben died, it doesn't matter. They can. So said, how do you know? Maybe taka they have to be over bar mitzvah when Reuben died. Maybe taka if the child was under bar mitzvah when Reuben died, he's not part of the yibum process. It says the pasuk ki yeshu achim yachtav. As long as the brothers were alive, not in the mother's womb, even 1 day old, there's a mitzvah yibum, and she just has to wait until he's old enough. So we find by Yehuda that they were waiting for Sheila to grow up. So it's the mitzvah of Yibum already. Man Tana, who's the one who said the idea is the first 30 days we believe that maybe these can, but beyond 30 days we don't believe that a person can control themselves living with a woman in the same room and not having any relations. Man Tana, who says the Atlas and game and Mukim Minish a person can control themselves. This follows up Meir. Tanya we learned. Tainas Psulim, we learning more is that he got married on Wednesday night. So if he finds out that his wife wasn't a virgin, the Bata Dinim would convene on Mondays and Thursdays, so he would go straight away tomorrow morning to Bezin. But if he, let's say, got married on a Tuesday, by the time Thursday comes around, he might think to himself, okay, she wasn't a virgin, but I love her already, and I'm not going to go report her. So, but it says that Tainas Psulim, for how long can a person go out there and claim that last night, even though he got married a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when can he say that? Kol Shleishiyim. For the first 30 days, he can say, look, I was nervous, didn't happen. It took within 30 days. Divrei Meir. Rabbi says depends. Nistra, if they were secluded alone in the room, we only give them 1 day. After a while, we don't believe anymore because definitely they already had relations and probably they got into a fight or something and it's coming with a story here. And therefore, maybe he's even making it up. Or below Nistra, for whatever reason, they didn't remain in one room, then even a number of years later. So Rabbi Yisrael, the person cannot control himself even 1 day. Mayor says up to 30 days you can control yourself. So the same thing here. By the Yevama, if she claimed up to 30 days, we believe her. After 30 days, we say we believe definitely that you had relations. Rabba said, I can even argue Rabbi Yasi. I can't look at Rabbi Yasi. When does Rabbi Yasi say that when you marry this woman, the gispa they're talking about, your wife, fiance that you already feel close to, and so on and so forth. So we believe that you already had relations. Aval Aisha's achi, but this is your brother's wife. In a way, you probably feel a little bit nervous or a little bit uncomfortable. It's your brother's wife. So maybe he's embarrassed from her, so therefore, so because he's embarrassed, so maybe it's quite possible that even what do you call it? That even Rabbi Yeshua with murder, it doesn't happen straight away. That usually it says that overnight definitely something happened. We don't believe that nothing happened. That's because it's your fiance, and and so you focus your mind on that. But when it comes over here, what do you call it? He's embarrassed, and therefore even Rabbi Yeshua agreed 30 days. Okay, then the mission continues. We'll stop over here.